Weeks turned into months after the Odyssey's return, and life on Earth began to shift in ways no one could have predicted. The crew of the Odyssey had sparked a global conversation about humanity's place in the universe, but the ripple effects of their discovery went far beyond scientific circles. Governments, corporations, and ordinary people all grappled with the implications of first contact. For some, it was a source of inspiration, a reminder that humanity was capable of greatness. For others, it was a cause for fear, a stark reminder of how small and vulnerable Earth truly was. Ryan Carter found himself at the center of this whirlwind. As the captain of the Odyssey, he became a reluctant celebrity, thrust into a spotlight he neither sought nor enjoyed. He gave interviews, attended conferences, and testified before international panels, always urging caution and cooperation. "We've been given an opportunity," he would say, his voice calm but firm. "But with that opportunity comes responsibility. We need to approach this with humility, not arrogance." Despite his efforts, Ryan couldn't control how the world reacted to the news. Some nations saw the encounter as a call to action, pouring resources into space exploration and defense programs. Others grew paranoid, convinced that the aliens posed a threat, even though there was no evidence to support such fears. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, fueled by misinformation and fear. Social media buzzed with wild speculation, ranging from claims that the government was hiding alien technology to accusations that the Odyssey's crew had made a catastrophic mistake by firing the missile. Laura Bennett, meanwhile, threw herself into her work, determined to make sense of the data they had collected. She spent long hours in her lab, analyzing the patterns transmitted by the sphere and searching for hidden meanings. Her colleagues marveled at her dedication, but she barely noticed their admiration. For Laura, the mission wasn't over. It couldn't be. She felt a deep sense of obligation to uncover the truth, to understand the intelligence behind the sphere and its intentions. Ethan Cole worked alongside Laura, helping her organize and interpret the recordings. Together, they created detailed reports for NASA and other scientific organizations, sharing their findings with anyone who might contribute to the effort. Ethan also took on the role of spokesperson for the crew, patiently answering questions from journalists and the public. He tried to strike a balance between optimism and realism, emphasizing both the wonder of the discovery and the challenges ahead. Olivia Grant, ever practical, focused on the technical side of things. She collaborated with engineers to improve spacecraft design, drawing on her experiences aboard the Odyssey to identify weaknesses and suggest improvements. Her insights proved invaluable, leading to breakthroughs in fuel efficiency and system reliability. Though she preferred working behind the scenes, her contributions earned her widespread recognition within the aerospace community. Danny Hayes struggled the most with life after the mission. His impulsive decision to fire the missile continued to haunt him, even as many hailed it as the turning point that led to first contact. Danny didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as someone who had taken a reckless gamble, one that could have ended in disaster. The weight of that realization gnawed at him, leaving him restless and unsure of his future. One evening, several months after their return, the crew reunited at a quiet cafe near the facility where they had been stationed. It was the first time they had all been together since the initial debriefings, and the meeting was informal. No agendas, no expectations. They sat around a small table, sipping coffee and catching up on each other's lives. "It feels strange, doesn't it?" Laura said, breaking the silence. "Being back here, knowing what we know." Ryan nodded, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "It's hard to explain to people who weren't there. They see us as heroes or scientists or, I don't know, symbols of something bigger than ourselves. But we're just people. We made mistakes, took risks, and got lucky." Olivia smirked. "Speak for yourself. Some of us were brilliant the whole time." The comment drew laughter from the group, easing the tension. Even Danny managed a weak smile, though his expression remained troubled. Finally, he spoke. "Do you think we did the right thing? Firing that missile, I mean. What if we scared them off? Or worse, pissed them off?" Ethan leaned forward, his tone reassuring. "You didn't scare them off. If anything, you woke them up. Remember what the sphere showed us? Their history, their story. They've been around for millions of years, maybe longer. They're not going to judge us based on one moment of impulsiveness." "That's true," Laura added. "They responded. To us, Danny. That means they were listening. Maybe they needed a nudge to pay attention." Ryan placed a hand on Danny's shoulder, his gaze steady. "You acted out of instinct, and it worked. Sure, it was risky, but so is everything about space exploration. We wouldn't be here if we weren't willing to take chances." Danny sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I guess you're right. Still, it's hard not to second-guess myself." The conversation shifted as the crew reflected on the changes happening around them. Space exploration had become a top priority for governments worldwide, with new missions being planned and launched at an unprecedented pace. Private companies joined the race, investing billions in cutting-edge technology. Humanity was reaching for the stars like never before, driven by the knowledge that they were not alone. But progress came with challenges. Tensions between nations escalated as competition for resources and influence in space intensified. Debates raged over how to allocate funding. Should it go toward defense, exploration, or addressing pressing issues on Earth? Protesters took to the streets, arguing that humanity's focus should remain on solving problems closer to home. Meanwhile, religious and philosophical groups wrestled with the implications of alien life, questioning long-held beliefs about creation and existence. Amid the chaos, the crew of the Odyssey found themselves torn between hope and concern. They had opened a door, but they couldn't predict where it would lead. Would humanity rise to the occasion, embracing the possibilities of interstellar connection? Or would fear and division drive them apart? Months later, during a rare break from their responsibilities, the crew gathered once again, this time at an observatory located high in the mountains. The air was crisp, and the sky above was clear, offering a breathtaking view of the stars. They stood together on the observation deck, gazing upward in silence. Laura broke the quiet first. "Do you think they're still out there, watching us?" Ryan shrugged, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Probably. Or maybe they've moved on to somewhere else, waiting for us to catch up." Ethan smiled faintly. "Either way, we'll find them again. Humanity doesn't give up easily." Olivia crossed her arms, her tone teasing but warm. "Let's just hope the next team has better equipment and fewer missiles." This time, even Danny laughed, the sound light and genuine. For all the uncertainty surrounding their mission, one thing was certain: they had changed the course of history. Humanity now stood on the brink of a new era, an era defined not by isolation, but by connection. As they stood beneath the vast expanse of stars, the crew of the Odyssey felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their journey had been difficult, filled with risks and sacrifices, but it had also been extraordinary. They had proven that humanity's voice could be heard even in the vast emptiness of space. And though they might never walk through the portal themselves, they knew they had paved the way for those who would follow. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the cosmos, they allowed themselves to dream, not just of what lay beyond the stars, but of what humanity could achieve if it dared to reach for them. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but they were ready. After all, the universe had already shown them that the impossible was within reach, if only they believed in themselves. And so, the forgotten ship became a legend, its name etched forever in the annals of exploration. The Odyssey had carried humanity's hopes and fears into the unknown, returning with a message that would echo across generations. The universe was vast, full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and humanity was ready to take its place among them. The Odyssey approached Earth's orbit, its battered hull reflecting the pale blue light of the planet below. After months of isolation in the vast emptiness of space, the sight of their home world filled the crew with a mix of relief and apprehension. The journey back had been long and quiet, the excitement of their encounter with the alien sphere giving way to the sobering reality of what lay ahead. They were no longer just explorers. They were messengers, carrying knowledge that could change humanity forever. As they prepared to re-enter Earth's atmosphere, Ryan gathered the crew for one final briefing. "This isn't going to be easy," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "People are going to have questions we might not have answers for, but we owe it to them to share what we've learned, to tell them the truth." Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And not just the facts," she added. "We need to show them why this matters, why it's worth believing in the possibility of life beyond Earth." Ethan adjusted his headset, his hands moving automatically as he checked the ship's communication systems. "I'll make sure the recordings and data are ready for transmission. NASA and the global science community will want access to everything." "We've collected." Olivia leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. "And we'll need to explain how we made contact, not just the technical stuff, but the risks we took. People are going to focus on that missile Danny fired. Some will call it reckless. Others might see it as bold." Danny shifted uncomfortably at the mention of his impulsive decision, but he didn't argue. Instead, he shrugged. "It got their attention, didn't it? Whether people like it or not, it worked." Ryan shot him a warning glance, but didn't press the issue. "What's done is done," he said firmly. "What matters now is how we handle the aftermath. We're not just representing ourselves. We're representing humanity." The Odyssey touched down at a remote landing site surrounded by eager scientists, government officials, and members of the media. As the crew disembarked, they were greeted with a mixture of cheers and flashes from cameras. Reporters shouted questions, their voices overlapping in a chaotic din. "Did you find aliens? What did they look like? Is Earth in danger?" The questions came fast and relentless, but Ryan held up a hand, signaling for silence. "We'll answer your questions soon," he promised, his voice calm but authoritative. "But first, let us get settled. This is a lot to process, not just for you, but for all of us." The crew was whisked away to a secure facility, where they spent hours debriefing with NASA officials and international representatives. Laura presented the data they had collected, explaining the patterns and symbols transmitted by the sphere. Her presentation was met with awe and disbelief, as scientists struggled to comprehend the complexity of the alien language. Ethan played, recordings of the exchange, highlighting moments where the sphere seemed to respond directly to humanity's messages. Olivia provided a detailed account of the ship's technical challenges during the mission, while Danny recounted the tense moments leading up to the missile launch. At one point, a high-ranking official leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You say you made contact with an intelligent species, yet there was no direct interaction, no face-to-face meeting, no clear dialogue. How do we know this wasn't some kind of natural phenomenon?" Ryan answered carefully, choosing his words with precision. "We don't have definitive proof that these beings exist in a form we would recognize. But based on the evidence, the deliberate responses, the patterns that mimicked our own messages, we believe we encountered something far greater than a random occurrence, something intelligent, aware, and capable of understanding us." The official frowned but didn't argue further. The sheer volume of data supported the crew's claims, leaving little room for doubt. Still, skepticism lingered in the air, mingling with excitement and fear. Word of the discovery spread quickly, igniting a firestorm of reactions around the globe. Social media buzzed with speculation, news outlets broadcast endless analysis, and governments scrambled to assess the implications. For the first time in history, humanity faced undeniable proof that it was not alone in the universe. The realization sparked both hope and anxiety. Some saw the encounter as a sign of unity, a chance for humanity to come together in pursuit of a common goal. Others viewed it as a threat, fearing the unknown intentions of the alien intelligence. Back at the facility, the crew tried to adjust to life on Earth after their extraordinary journey. It wasn't easy. The constant attention was exhausting, and the weight of their responsibility weighed heavily on each of them. Laura buried herself in research, analyzing every byte of data in search of new insights. Ethan fielded countless requests for interviews, patiently explaining the significance of the mission to anyone who asked. Olivia found solace in tinkering with machinery, using her hands to distract herself from the chaos. And Danny, unable to sit still, wandered the halls of the facility, restless and uncertain about his place in the spotlight. Ryan, meanwhile, became the public face of the mission. He gave speeches, attended conferences, and met with world leaders, always emphasizing the importance of caution and cooperation. "This isn't just about us," he reminded audiences again and again. "It's about the future of humanity. We've been given a rare opportunity to learn, to grow, and to reach out to something greater than ourselves. Let's not waste it." Despite the challenges, the crew remained united, drawing strength from their shared experience. They knew they had achieved something monumental, something that would inspire generations to come. Their mission had proven that humanity's voice could be heard even in the vast emptiness of space. And though they hadn't fully understood the aliens' message, they had taken the first step toward mutual understanding, a step that would pave the way for future exploration. One evening, weeks after their return, the crew gathered in a small conference room at the facility. The room was dimly lit, the hum of distant machinery providing a comforting backdrop. They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Laura broke the quiet. "Do you think they're still watching us?" she asked softly, her gaze fixed on the floor. Ryan shrugged, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe, or maybe they've moved on to somewhere else waiting for us to catch up." Danny leaned back in his chair, his usual bravado softened by reflection. "Either way, I hope someone gets to walk through that portal someday, to see what's on the other side." Ethan nodded, his eyes distant. "Someday someone will, and when they do, they'll owe it to us, for showing them the way." Olivia crossed her arms, a hint of a smirk playing on her lips. "Let's just hope whoever goes next has better equipment than we did." The comment drew laughter from the group, breaking the tension. For all the uncertainty surrounding their mission, one thing was clear. They had changed the course of history. Humanity now stood on the threshold of a new era, an era defined not by isolation, but by connection. As the crew left the room, they paused briefly to look out a nearby window. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, dotted with stars. That seemed closer than ever before. Somewhere out there, beyond the limits of human understanding, the sphere continued its silent vigil. Its purpose remained a mystery, but its message was clear. The universe was vast, full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and humanity was ready to take its place among them. For Ryan, Laura, Ethan, Olivia, and Danny, the journey was far from over. They had opened a door, bridging the gap between worlds, and though they might never walk through that door themselves, they knew they had laid the foundation for those who would follow. In doing so, they had fulfilled the greatest dream of exploration, not to conquer, but to connect, not to dominate, but to discover. And in that discovery, they had found something truly extraordinary, the boundless potential of humanity itself. The shimmering portal opened before the Odyssey, revealing a breathtaking expanse of stars, swirling nebulae, and distant planets glowing with colors humanity had never seen. It was like staring into a dream, a place so beautiful and vast that it made Earth's night sky seem dull in comparison. The crew stood frozen on the bridge, their eyes wide as they took in the sight. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with awe and a sense of profound insignificance. Laura was the first to break it. This is beyond anything I imagined," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She clutched the edge of her console, her fingers gripping tightly as if afraid she might float away. "It's not just a gateway, it's an invitation." Ryan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. He felt a mix of emotions, wonder, fear, and a deep sense of responsibility. "An invitation we're not ready for," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Turning to the crew, he added, "We can't go through that portal. Not yet. Humanity isn't prepared for what lies on the other side." Danny frowned, clearly frustrated. "But this could be our only chance. If we don't take it now, who knows when or if we'll ever get another opportunity." Olivia stepped forward, her practical nature cutting through Danny's impatience. "And what happens if we do go? We have no idea what's waiting for us. What if it's dangerous? What if we can't come back? We're barely keeping the Odyssey running as it is. How are we supposed to survive whatever's out there?" Ethan, who had been quietly observing the portal, finally spoke up. "She's right. This isn't about us, it's about humanity. We're here to learn, to gather information. If we rush in blindly, we risk losing everything we've worked for." Ryan placed a hand on Danny's shoulder, his tone firm but kind. "I know you want to explore, Danny, so do I. But we have a duty to bring this knowledge back to Earth. That's why we came here, to pave the way for future missions. This portal, it's proof that we're not alone. That's enough, for now." Reluctantly, Danny nodded, though his disappointment was clear. He glanced at the portal one last time, his jaw clenched. Fine. But someday, someone will walk through that door, and when they do, they'll owe it to us. As the crew turned their attention back to the sphere, they realized it was changing again. The patterns on its surface began to slow, their vibrant colors dimming until they were little more than faint glimmers. The energy surrounding the Odyssey faded, leaving the ship bathed in the cold light of the dying star nearby. It was a subtle shift but unmistakable, a sign that the aliens were withdrawing. "They're leaving," Laura said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. She stared at the monitors, which were now displaying static instead of the intricate patterns they had spent days deciphering. "They've said everything they wanted to say," Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Or maybe they've shown us all they think we're ready to understand. Either way, it's time for us to go." The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The Odyssey's supplies were dwindling, and the ship itself was showing signs of wear from the prolonged encounter. They couldn't stay indefinitely, no matter how much they wanted to. Slowly, reluctantly, Ryan gave the order to turn the ship around. As the Odyssey moved away from the sphere, the crew watched the portal shrink and fade until it vanished completely. The sight left them with a bittersweet feeling, a mixture of accomplishment and longing. They had made contact with an alien intelligence, something humanity had dreamed of for centuries. Yet the encounter had raised more questions than it answered. Who were these beings? What did they want from humanity? And why had they chosen to acknowledge the Odyssey after ignoring countless others? Back on the ship, the mood was somber. Each member of the crew processed the experience in their own way. Laura retreated to her workstation, poring over the data they had collected during their exchange with the sphere. She replayed the patterns, analyzing every detail in hopes of uncovering some hidden meaning. Her determination bordered on obsession, but no one blamed her. This was the discovery of a lifetime, and she refused to let even the smallest clue slip past unnoticed. Ethan, meanwhile, focused on organizing the recordings and transmissions they had exchanged with the sphere. He compiled them into a single file, adding notes and observations to create a comprehensive report for Earth. His hands moved quickly across the controls, but his mind kept drifting back to the images they had received. The stories of creation, destruction, and rebirth. They haunted him, not because they were frightening, but because they were so profoundly alien. How could humanity hope to understand such a vastly different perspective? Olivia threw herself into maintenance work, using the physical labor as a distraction from the weight of what they had experienced. She crawled through the ship's cramped corridors, tightening bolts and checking circuits, ensuring that the Odyssey would make it home safely. Her efficiency was unmatched, but there was a tension in her movements, a restlessness that betrayed her calm exterior. Danny, unable to sit still, paced the length of the bridge. His earlier frustration had given way to quiet contemplation, though his thoughts were anything but peaceful. He replayed the events of the past few weeks in his mind, questioning whether they had done enough. Had they missed something? Could they have pushed further? Tried harder? The uncertainty gnawed at him, leaving him restless and irritable. Ryan, as always, bore the burden of leadership. He spent hours reviewing the ship's course, calculating fuel consumption, and planning for contingencies. But even he couldn't escape the emotional toll of the mission. Late at night, when the others were asleep, he sat alone in the captain's chair, staring out at the stars. The encounter with the sphere had changed him, forcing him to confront the limits of human understanding and the vastness of the universe. Despite the challenges, the crew found solace in each other. They shared meals together, exchanging stories and laughter to lighten the mood. Laura talked about her childhood, fascination with space, while Ethan recounted funny moments from his training. Olivia surprised everyone with tales of her misadventures as a mechanic, and even Danny managed to crack a smile with one of his trademark jokes. These small moments of connection reminded them that despite everything, they were still human, and that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to adapt, persevere, and find joy even in the darkest times. As the Odyssey journeyed farther from the sphere, the crew began to reflect on the significance of their mission. They had proven that humanity's voice could be heard, even in the vast emptiness of space. Their actions had sparked a dialogue between two vastly different species, bridging a gap that had once seemed insurmountable. Though they hadn't fully understood the aliens' message, they had taken the first step toward mutual understanding, a step that would inspire generations to come. Laura summed it up best during one of their evening discussions. "We may not have all the answers," she said, her voice steady despite the fatigue etched on her face. "But we've opened a door that leads to possibilities we can't even imagine yet. That's worth everything we've been through." The others nodded in agreement, their spirits lifted by her words. Even Danny, who had been skeptical of retreat, seemed to find peace in the idea that their mission was just the beginning. Humanity's journey into the stars was far from over. It had only just begun. By the time the Odyssey reached the outer edges of the star system, the crew had settled into a routine. The initial shock of their encounter had faded, replaced by a quiet determination to see the mission through to the end. They monitored the ship's systems closely, conserving resources and preparing for the long journey back to Earth. Each day brought them closer to home, but also closer to the reality of what awaited them, an uncertain future filled with questions, debates, and the daunting task of sharing their story with the world. On the final leg of their voyage, Ryan gathered the crew for one last meeting. "We've accomplished something incredible," he began, his voice filled with pride. "Something that will change the course of history. But remember, this isn't just about us. It's about everyone back on Earth. The people who sent us here, the ones who believed in the possibility of life beyond our planet. When we return, we'll have a responsibility to share what we've learned. Not just the facts, but the wonder, the hope, and the challenges we faced." The crew listened intently, their expressions thoughtful. They knew Ryan was right. The Odyssey had become more than just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's potential to reach beyond itself, to seek connection in the vast unknown. And, as they prepared to re-enter Earth's orbit, they carried with them not only data and recordings, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The stars outside the viewport twinkled faintly, their light guiding the Odyssey home. The crew gazed at them, their hearts filled with gratitude and determination. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger for it. Whatever lay ahead, they knew they were ready. After all, the universe had already shown them that the impossible was within reach, if only they dared to try. The beams of light from the sphere surrounded the Odyssey, filling the ship with a warm, pulsating glow. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The crew froze in place, their eyes wide as they watched the energy envelop them. It wasn't hostile. It didn't feel like an attack, but it was overwhelming. The ship's systems flickered, lights dimmed and brightened, and the hum of the engines grew louder before settling into a steady rhythm. Ryan gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white as he tried to make sense of what was happening. "Is this some kind of communication?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. She stared at the monitors, which were now displaying streams of data unlike anything she had ever seen. Patterns of light and color danced across the screens, shifting and rearranging themselves in ways that defied logic. It was beautiful, but also deeply unsettling. Ethan leaned closer to his station, adjusting the frequency settings on the communication array. "I don't know," he admitted, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's not like any signal I've encountered before. It's almost like they're trying to interact with us, but not in a way we can fully understand." Olivia, who had been monitoring the ship's power levels, looked up from her panel. "Whatever it is, it's affecting our systems. I'm reading spikes in energy output, but nothing's breaking down. It's like the ship is being scanned." Danny, still stationed near the missile controls, shifted uncomfortably. His earlier excitement had faded, replaced by a mix of awe and unease. "So what do we do now? Just sit here and let them poke around?" Ryan shook his head, though his expression remained tense. "We wait. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. This feels different, like they're trying to say something." The seconds stretched into minutes as the crew sat in silence, watching the strange patterns play out on the monitors. Slowly, the beams of light began to fade, leaving behind an eerie calm. The ship's systems stabilized, and the hum of the engines returned to its usual tone. But the crew knew something had changed. The sphere had acknowledged them, whether out of curiosity, recognition, or something else entirely, they couldn't be sure. Laura was the first to break the silence. "That wasn't random," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They responded to us. Whatever those patterns are, they're deliberate. They're trying to communicate." Ryan nodded slowly, his mind racing. "If they're trying to talk, then we need to figure out how to listen. Ethan, can you isolate those patterns and analyze them? See if there's any structure we can decode?" Ethan nodded, already working at his station. "I'll try, but it's going to take time. These signals are incredibly complex. It's like trying to translate a language without a Rosetta Stone." While Ethan worked, Laura turned her attention back to the sphere. Through the viewport, it loomed larger than ever, its surface shimmering with intricate designs that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the faint vibrations still rippling through the ship. "It's alive," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "Not in the biological sense, but it's intelligent. It knows we're here." Olivia frowned, glancing between the monitors and the sphere. "If it's intelligent, why did it ignore us for so long? Why wait until Danny fired that missile?" Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Maybe it didn't think we were worth noticing, until we proved ourselves." Or maybe it was testing us, seeing how far we'd go to get its attention. Danny winced at the mention of his impulsive decision, but he didn't argue. Instead, he crossed his arms and leaned back in his chair. Well, whatever the reason, it worked. We got their attention. Now what? Ryan didn't answer right away. He knew the next steps were crucial. They had made contact, however tenuous, and now they needed to build on that connection. But how? The aliens, if that's what they were, spoke in a language of light and energy, one that humanity had no frame of reference for. Communicating with them would require creativity, patience, and perhaps a leap of faith. By the time Ethan finally spoke up, hours had passed. "I think I've found something," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "There's a repeating sequence in the patterns. It's subtle, but it's there. I'm running it through our translation algorithms now." Laura hurried over to his station, peering over his shoulder as the computer processed the data. "Could it be a message?" she asked, her eyes scanning the lines of code scrolling across the screen. "Maybe," Ethan replied. "But even if it is, we won't be able to understand it without context. We need to give them something in return, something they can recognize as communication." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll send them everything we can. Images, sounds, symbols, anything that might help them understand who we are." The crew sprang into action, pooling their resources to create a comprehensive message. Laura contributed diagrams of Earth's solar system and illustrations of human anatomy. Olivia recorded short clips of the ship's systems in operation, hoping to demonstrate their technological capabilities. Danny suggested including footage of Earth itself, vast oceans, sprawling cities, and lush forests, all captured in high-definition video. Even Ryan added his own contribution, a series of mathematical equations representing humanity's understanding of the universe. Ethan compiled all the materials into a single transmission, layering them together in a format designed to be as clear and accessible as possible. When the message was ready, he hesitated, his finger hovering over the send button. "Are we sure about this?" he asked, glancing at the others. "Once we send this, there's no taking it back." Ryan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're sure. This is why we're here, to take risks, to reach out. If we don't try, we'll never know." With a deep breath, Ethan pressed the button. The message shot out into space, carried by a powerful signal aimed directly at the sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the sphere began to react. Its surface lit up with new patterns, brighter and more intricate than before. The crew watched in amazement as the designs shifted and reformed, creating shapes that seemed to echo elements of their own message. "It's responding!" Laura exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "Look, they're mimicking some of our symbols. They're trying to understand us." Ethan adjusted the sensors, capturing every detail of the sphere's response. "This is incredible," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "They're learning, adapting. It's like they're building a bridge between their language and ours." As the exchange continued, the crew began to piece together fragments of meaning. The sphere's patterns told a story, a tale of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Images of stars being born and dying, planets forming and crumbling, civilizations rising and falling. It was a cycle of existence, vast and eternal, far beyond the scope of human comprehension. Laura studied the patterns intently, her mind racing to interpret their significance. "This isn't just a message," she said softly. "It's a history, a record of their journey. They're showing us who they are, or who they were." Ryan listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "And they're waiting for us to do the same, to share our story." Inspired, the crew decided to expand their message. They added recordings of music, ranging from classical symphonies to modern pop songs. They included poetry and literature, showcasing humanity's creativity and imagination. Personal stories from each member of the crew were recorded and transmitted, offering glimpses into their lives back on Earth. Even simple things, laughter, tears, moments of joy and sorrow were captured and sent into the void. When the expanded message reached the sphere, its reaction was immediate. The patterns grew more vibrant, swirling with colors that seemed to radiate warmth and understanding. For the first time since their encounter began, the crew felt a sense of connection, not just with the sphere, but with whatever intelligence lay behind it. "It's working," Ethan said, his voice filled with awe. "They're responding to us, really responding." Laura nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "This is it. This is what we came here for, proof that we're not alone." But as the initial excitement began to fade, reality set in. The sphere's responses, while encouraging, were still limited. The crew had bridged a gap, but the chasm between their two species remained vast. Understanding would take time they weren't sure they had. Ryan called another meeting to discuss their next move. "We've made progress," he began, addressing the crew. "But we're still a long way from true communication. We need to decide whether to stay and keep trying or retreat and report what we've learned." Danny, who had been unusually quiet during the exchange, spoke up immediately. "We can't leave now, not when we're this close. If we go back, it'll take years for another mission to get here. By then, they might lose interest, or worse, forget about us." Olivia frowned, clearly torn. "But staying carries risks, too. Our supplies are running low, and the longer we're out here, the harder it'll be to get home." Laura hesitated, weighing the options. Finally, she spoke. "I think we have to stay, at least for a little while longer. What we've learned here is too important to walk away from. Humanity deserves to know that there's someone, or something, out there listening." Ryan nodded slowly, his decision already made. "All right, we'll stay, but we need to be smart about it. Conserve resources, monitor the sphere closely, and prepare for anything. If things start to go south, we pull out immediately." As the Odyssey moved closer to the source of the strange energy readings, the crew's anticipation grew. The ship's instruments were now picking up patterns that suggested something artificial, a structure or device of some kind. Laura spent hours analyzing the data, her eyes glued to the monitors as she tried to piece together what they might be approaching. "It's not natural," she said one evening, her voice tinged with both excitement and nervousness. "These readings are too precise, too deliberate. Whatever it is, it was built." Ryan listened carefully but remained skeptical. "Built by who? Or what?" he asked, leaning over the console to study the numbers himself. "We don't know if this is friendly or hostile. For all we know, it could be a trap." Danny, Ever, the optimist, couldn't help but grin. "Or it could be the discovery of a lifetime," he countered, his enthusiasm undiminished. "Think about it, Captain. If this really is alien tech, we're talking about proof of intelligent life beyond Earth. That's worth taking a risk for." Olivia chimed in from her workstation, where she was running diagnostics on the ship's systems. "If it's alien tech, it's probably way beyond anything we've seen before. We need to be ready for anything, especially if things go sideways." Ethan, who had been quietly monitoring communications, nodded in agreement. "And we still haven't picked up any signals. No signs of life, no messages, nothing. It's like whatever's out there doesn't care we're here." The tension aboard the ship was palpable. Each crew member had their own thoughts about what lay ahead, but none of them could deny the weight of the moment. They were on the brink of something monumental, something that could change humanity's understanding of the universe forever, or end in disaster. Finally, after days of careful navigation, the Odyssey reached the edge of the phenomenon. What they saw left them speechless. Rising before them was an enormous sphere, its surface shimmering with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and glow like living organisms. The structure was impossibly large, dwarfing the tiny human vessel. It floated silently near a dying star, its light reflecting off the sphere's surface in dazzling hues of gold and silver. Laura gasped, her hands trembling as she adjusted the ship's sensors to get a better look. This is incredible, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The patterns, it's almost like they're communicating, but not in a way we can understand. Ryan studied the sphere through the viewport, his expression unreadable. Stay focused, he reminded the crew, though his own heart was racing. We don't know what this thing is capable of. Ethan, have you picked up anything yet? Ethan shook his head, frustration evident on his face. Nothing. I've tried every frequency, every protocol we have. It's like it doesn't even register our presence. Danny leaned forward, his eyes wide with wonder. Maybe it's waiting for us to make the first move. Should we send a probe? Get a closer look? Ryan hesitated, weighing the risks. Sending a probe would give them valuable information, but it could also provoke a reaction, good or bad, from the mysterious structure. After a long pause, he finally nodded. All right, let's deploy the probe. But keep it at a safe distance. If anything happens, we pull it back immediately. Olivia worked quickly to prepare the probe, her hands steady despite the mounting tension. Once everything was ready, she launched it toward the sphere. The small drone moved cautiously, its cameras capturing images and transmitting data back to the Odyssey. At first, everything seemed normal. The probe sent back stunning visuals of the sphere's surface, revealing details that were impossible to see from afar. The shifting patterns appeared to form shapes and symbols, as if telling a story, but a story written in a language no human had ever encountered. Then, without warning, the probe vanished. One moment it was there, hovering near the sphere, and the next it was gone, as if swallowed by the void. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the crew scrambled to make sense of what had just happened. "What the hell was that?" Danny exclaimed, his earlier excitement replaced by alarm. "Unknown," Olivia replied, her fingers flying across the controls as she tried to locate the probe. "It's like it just disappeared. There's no trace of it." Ryan clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "Everyone stay calm. We don't know what caused that. It could be a malfunction or—" He trailed off, unwilling to voice the darker possibilities. Before anyone could respond, the alarms sounded again. This time, the crew turned their attention to the sphere. Dozens of smaller objects had emerged from its surface, surrounding the Odyssey in a matter of seconds. They were sleek and metallic, their shapes smooth and aerodynamic, gliding effortlessly through space. The objects didn't attack, they simply hovered, forming a loose perimeter around the ship. Danny's hand instinctively went to the controls for the missile systems, but Ryan stopped him with a sharp glance. "Not yet," he said firmly. "We don't know their intentions. Let's try communicating again." Ethan immediately set to work, broadcasting a series of signals designed to convey peace and curiosity. He included mathematical sequences, musical tones, and visual patterns, all universal languages, or so they hoped. But the aliens, if that's what these objects represented, remained silent. Their presence was unnerving, a constant reminder of how small and vulnerable the Odyssey truly was. Laura watched the objects intently, her mind working overtime. "They're not attacking," she observed. "That has to mean something, right? Maybe they're studying us, trying to figure out who we are." Ryan frowned. "Or maybe they're deciding whether we're worth their time. Either way, we're at their mercy." Hours passed, and the situation showed no signs of changing. The alien objects continued to hover silently, their movements fluid and deliberate. Inside the Odyssey, The atmosphere grew heavier with each passing minute. The crew took turns, monitoring the situation, their nerves frayed from the uncertainty. Danny, unable to sit still any longer, paced back and forth across the bridge. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath. "We're sitting ducks out here. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Why are they just watching?" "Because they can," Olivia replied bluntly, her tone sharp. "We're nothing compared to them. They don't need to rush." Ryan shot her a warning look, but he didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. The Odyssey was completely outmatched, and everyone aboard knew it. Still, giving up wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on exploration, on pushing boundaries, and facing the unknown. Turning back now would mean abandoning everything they had worked for. As the hours stretched into days, the crew began to feel the strain of their predicament. Sleep became elusive, meals were skipped, and tempers flared. Even Laura, usually so composed, found herself snapping at Danny when he suggested firing another signal flare to get the aliens' attention. "We've tried everything," she snapped. "If they're ignoring us, it's because they don't care. We're wasting our time." But deep down, she didn't believe her own words. Something about the sphere felt alive. It wasn't just a machine, it was intelligent, aware. And the fact that it hadn't attacked gave her hope that communication might still be possible. On the third day, Ryan called a meeting. The crew gathered in the cramped mess hall, their faces drawn and weary. "We need to decide what to do next," he began, his voice firm but gentle. "Staying here isn't getting us anywhere, and our supplies won't last forever. We have two options: retreat and report what we've found, or take a more direct approach." Danny perked up at the mention of a direct approach. "What do you mean?" he asked eagerly. Ryan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I mean we escalate. A show of force, not to attack, but to demand their attention. Sometimes you have to make noise to be heard." The room fell silent as the others considered his proposal. Laura looked uneasy, while Olivia crossed her arms, clearly skeptical. Only Danny seemed excited by the idea. "It could work," he said, his eyes lighting up. "If they're ignoring us because they think we're weak, maybe showing them we're not will change their minds." Ryan nodded slowly. "It's risky, but we're running out of options. Any objections?" Laura opened her mouth to protest, but closed it again. She wanted to argue, to insist they keep trying peaceful methods, but she couldn't deny that their current strategy wasn't working. Reluctantly, she gave a small nod of agreement. With the decision made, the crew prepared. For the next step, Ryan outlined a plan. They would fire a single missile, not aimed at the sphere itself, but close enough to create a visible explosion. The goal was to demonstrate their capabilities without causing harm. It was a gamble, but it might be their only chance to break through the silence. As the moment approached, the tension aboard the Odyssey reached a fever pitch. Danny manned the missile controls, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Ryan stood nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Laura, Olivia, and Ethan watched anxiously from their stations, holding their breath as the countdown began. When the missile launched, it streaked through space like a bolt of lightning, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. The explosion lit up the darkness, bathing the Odyssey and the surrounding objects in a brilliant flash of light. For a moment, everything froze. Then, the sphere reacted. Bright beams of energy shot out from its surface, enveloping then